I was in the courtroom that day, and let me tell you, the energy was unreal. Not loud, not chaotic, just this tense, heavy silence like everyone knew something was about to break. Diddy walked in dressed like he was trying to make a statement. Gray suit, gray tie, gray shoes. His daughters came in with him, Chance, Delilah, Jessie, and you could tell every detail had been planned. Matching black and white outfits, hair slicked back, calm expressions. It felt more like a red carpet than a courtroom, and that told me everything. But the moment the testimony started, the mood shifted. I saw it with my own eyes. At first, they sat there like nothing was wrong. Diddy's girls, front row, poised and quiet. But as soon as the testimony turned graphic, it was like a switch flipped. The male escort started going into detail about what Cassie was allegedly put through. And not just the lifestyle Diddy's defense kept bringing up, but the fear, the control, the things no one wants to picture their father being a part of. That's when it happened. The twins stood up and left. They didn't make a scene and they couldn't sit through it. And honestly, I don't blame them. But here's what got me. A few minutes passed and they came back in, only to leave again when things got even worse. They were in and out, like they were trying to support him but couldn't stomach the truth. I still remember the moment the escort took the stand. The entire room shifted. People leaned in. He said he was hired for what he thought was a bachelor party. But when he showed up, it was just Cassie standing there in stripper heels, a red wig, red lingerie, and not a single other person in sight. She asked if he'd rub baby oil on her, then casually dropped, "Do you mind if my husband's here?" He said he was confused, until she followed it up with, "Don't worry, he's not into guys, he just likes to watch." And who was sitting in the corner? Diddy. According to the escort, Diddy was covered up. Bathrobe, bandana over his face, baseball cap pulled low. But his voice gave him away. He wasn't just there. He was directing it, telling them what to do, where to touch, how to move. Even though Cassie was the one handing over the money, $2,000 up front, then another $2,000 as a tip, it was clear to the escort, this wasn't Cassie's idea. And then not long after he left, Cassie texted him asking for a photo. A few minutes later, "Come back up." He did, and what he described next was graphic, detailed, and deeply disturbing. And the whole time, Diddy just sat in the corner watching. And I watched that jury as they listened. You could see it, the shift in their posture, the look on their faces. And as for Diddy's daughters, that was one of the moments they couldn't bear to sit through. Now, here's the part that stuck with me. Not just what happened, but how it happened. The defense kept trying to frame Cassie as a willing participant, like this was all just part of an unconventional lifestyle. But sitting there, hearing that testimony, watching how it all unfolded, that escort may have been talking about a single night, but the details painted a much bigger picture. Cassie might have handed him the cash, but he said it straight. She was just the middleman. Diddy was the one pulling every string. He told them what to do. He gave the orders. And when the guy said Diddy wanted to stay in touch directly, you could see it wasn't about anything random. Even the way Cassie texted him after, "Send me a pic, come back up." It sounded casual on the surface, but in that courtroom, it felt like protocol, like something she'd done before. That was obedience. And when you take that in, when you really sit with what it means, suddenly all the PR, the just a lifestyle excuse, the defense team's smooth talk, it all starts to fall apart. They called them Wild King Nights. That's the phrase that came up in court, and honestly, I wish I could unhear it. This wasn't about one strange evening or a rare occurrence. Cassie wasn't living a fantasy. She was trapped in a cycle, and the more the witnesses talked, the clearer that became. Once a week, sometimes more, she'd be taken to a hotel. Not a luxury suite, a dark room lit only by candles, no windows open, no natural light, just her, the silence, and whatever Diddy had planned next. She'd be there for days, 3, 4 at a time. And this wasn't just isolation, it was physical. According to the testimony, she was being forced to take so many things into her body, her heart would start to react. She'd get sick, but she wasn't allowed to stop. And through all of this, Diddy's team tried to frame it as her preference. Like this was what she wanted. Like this was her lifestyle. But sitting in that courtroom, I can tell you, nobody bought that. And that name, Wild King Nights, almost makes it sound like some kind of twisted game. But from where I was sitting, it didn't sound like royalty. It sounded like ritual. But when they played that footage in court, there was no spinning it. I was there when the prosecution rolled the hotel security video from 2016. No sound, just grainy footage, but it said more than any opening statement ever could. We watched as Diddy shoved Cassie to the ground. The room went still. And just when Diddy's defense team tried to brush it off, He was just trying to pull her back, they claimed. The prosecutor calmly looked up and said, "Run it back." The judge nodded. They did. Then again. Run it again. We all sat there watching the same assault over and over, just Diddy on camera showing everyone exactly who he really was. And I watched his team squirm. They couldn't argue against the footage, so they tried to minimize it, calling it a moment of frustration, suggesting she wasn't really hurt, but you could see it in the jury's faces. That explanation wasn't landing, and in the back of the room, Cassie's husband was sitting there the entire time. His eyes said everything, the kind of quiet rage you only get from someone holding back every ounce of emotion. It was one of the few times nobody said a word after the video ended, because no one needed to. Diddy didn't just walk into court that day. He arrived surrounded by polished appearances and careful optics. Gray on gray suit, poised demeanor, his daughters beside him like symbols of loyalty and legacy. It was a scene crafted for cameras, deliberate, sharp, and meant to say, "I'm still in control." But control isn't something you can fake under oath. As the testimony dragged truths out of the shadows, that image started to fracture. The polished music mogul turned into something far more troubling. A man accused of manipulation, abuse, and psychological control over those closest to him. And the moment his daughters walked out, that was the rupture. No words, no statements, just movement. Out of the courtroom, away from the reality they were hearing. And it wasn't a one-time exit. It happened again. That's not support. That's silent protest. It made people question everything. Why were they brought there in the first place? Were they meant to soften his image? To say, "I'm still a father, a protector, a provider"? If that was the plan, it backfired spectacularly. Because in that moment, they didn't reflect family unity. They reflected the truth that even those closest to him couldn't sit through the details. No brand, no legacy, no PR stunt could shield him now. The mask slipped. And what was behind it stunned everyone. For years, Diddy curated an identity. Mogul, innovator, charmer, someone living outside the lines but never breaking them. And when the accusations surfaced, his team leaned into that myth. They called it eccentric, unorthodox, a lifestyle, something between two consenting adults. But the courtroom painted a different picture, not of mutual desire, but of dominance, control, and calculated emotional warfare. Testimony spoke louder than any press release. Surveillance footage cut through every denial. And the people meant to humanize him, his own daughters, couldn't even bear to stay in the room. That's not just a narrative break. That's a collapse. Because at the end of all this, one truth stood taller than the rest. When even your daughters can't sit through the version of you being laid bare in court, it doesn't matter how powerful your image is. The truth has a way of cutting through even the best PR. And in this case, it exposed the empire. Not just for what it built, but for everything it tried to bury. So, if you want more stories that pull back the curtain, stories the mainstream won't always tell, make sure you're subscribed. Hit that button, turn on notifications, and stay locked in. Because what's being exposed now might just be the beginning.